Welcome, Maria McMahon.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we are here tonight because we're going to be talking mostly about narcissists. And you've got a book out that is about the 50 signs.
Top 50
yes.
Red flags of romantic predators, yes.
Okay, and that book is necessary because people can't see it.
Absolutely, people cannot see it.
Like nobody walks around the street and say, there goes a narcissist, right?
Yeah, this is what's such a tragedy, and I see it all the time in my groups because I have so many people coming in, and I see this all the time. They had no idea what a narcissist was until they started Googling, and they started Googling abusive relationships or jealous husband or jealous wife, or irrational behavior in relationships, and through these sort of Google searches they end up finding narcissistic behavior, narcissistic personality disorder, and then they start reading it. And so many times people have said to me, oh my God, this is a fly on the wall in my life. This is exactly what I'm dealing with, and that's how they come to know about it.
But that's not in the beginning. In the beginning, we're so eager to please and to be, and then anybody who goes into a relationship with a narcissist are actually getting broken down. Is it not?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if we're talking specifically about romantic relationships, which I think we are because my book is about romantic predators, what happens in the beginning with narcissists is they love bomb you. So they treat you like, oh my God, you are the best thing since sliced bread. You are fantastic. You're amazing. You're the best thing that's ever happened to them. And they absolutely bombard you with these, this overwhelming amount of love and affection, which is commonly known as idealization or love bombing. And anyone who's very briefly into their research about narcissists will come across the basic terminology, and love bombing is the first. So you get so swept up in this, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. And yet part of you is thinking, oh, this can't be true, but it's so good. They're so good at convincing you, and you are just on this absolute high, the dopamine rush and all of that, feeling so loved up that you just want it to be true. So you keep kind of going along with it, and you get sucked in so badly that by the time you really realize something's wrong, it's kind of too late.
Yeah, you're already they're very determined, right?
Incredibly. They're very determined. They're also so very manipulative. They're very, very good at mirroring and matching and modeling you, the person in front of them. So they create this incredibly powerful bond with you by faking everything, by faking how you think and how you talk and how you act, all of it. They're able to kind of feed it back. So it's like you're falling in love with yourself, really, if you can get really objective about it and step away and realize it, because you're like, wow, they think I'm so amazing. Yeah, I'm so amazing. So it's kind of you're falling in love with yourself, but it's very, very intoxicating when that happens to you, which is why people become trauma bonded. It's like being addicted. Often it's referred to that it's like being addicted to heroin or to a really powerful drug, because you get this powerful hit. The love chemicals are going crazy. And because they are, as you say, very, very, they are powerful, they're manipulative, and they draw people in. This happens all the time. And then, as I said, by the time you start to realize something's not quite right, and they start to gradually, the mask comes off, as we say, they start to behave oddly, or they start to suddenly pull back from you, and there's bundles of different behaviors. But then what typically happens is, as soon as you start to realize that, and you start to question them or anything, they'll very often bounce back into love bombing you again. So you get this push-pull thing that 1 minute you're thinking, well, what have I done wrong? And maybe it's all over. And then the next, they're all over you again. So it's like you've got that reward, that, that delightful feeling back again. And you think, oh, thank God. So you're relieved. Everything is still okay. He or she still loves me. They're still besotted with me. And then this starts a pattern. It's very, very common in romantic relationships. And it then gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And it's very difficult to break out of it, very difficult to leave these type of relationships.
Okay, so while you're in this relationship, you get slowly diminished. So you lose little bits of yourself slowly. So can you
Absolutely.
explain to us what happens with you, how you get separated from your support systems?
Well, there's several ways, but very good question. One of the things they do in the beginning when they start to love bomb you, they want to basically own you and control you, because narcissistic abuse is very much about control. One of the things they typically do is isolate you from your family and friends. So they'll show jealousy, inappropriate jealousy, but they then dress it up to look like, oh, but I just want to spend all my time with you. I can't bear to not be with you. And slowly and surely they cut you off from, and this has happened to people I've worked with and in my group, they've been completely isolated from their families, from their friends, from their best friends. One or two people I know were also, they moved with the narcissist into a completely foreign part of the country where they had absolutely no support whatsoever. So that's one thing, they isolate you and cut you off. So you start to rely on them even more because they effectively become your entire world. You know, you've got no one else to talk to, no one to rely on. So they become even bigger and more important. So that's one of the things they do. Another thing that they do a lot is gaslighting, which you probably are familiar with. It's another one of the buzzwords in narcissistic abuse, is that they make you start thinking that something they said or didn't happen, they didn't say it, or something you said or did, they'll say, but that's not how it was, and they'll twist and turn everything. So this makes you start doubting your reality. And to a rational person, like, you know, us sitting here now, you think, well, how can this be possible? That's ridiculous. Of course, you know what you said and you know what you did. But this abuse, it's so insidious and it creeps up slowly, and often it's in the guise of loving and caring. Oh, but darling, no, that's not what happened. And you start to think, oh, did I do that? Was that me? Have I got this wrong? And after a while, you really start second guessing yourself. So, sorry, my foot was going off for some bizarre reason. So when you've got this isolation, and then you've also got this love bombing, and then this pulling away, and then they come back to you, your whole emotional world starts to destabilize, and you start to kind of recognize or need them even more. So does that answer your question? That's just a couple of things.
Yes, so by this time you are diminished, you separated,
from your family,
you're doubting yourself, you blamed for stuff. So then you don't really, you stop believing in yourself. Isn't that really in the end what happens, that you lose your self-confidence?
Absolutely. Self-worth is a huge part of it. So with all of these things we've talked about, you're absolutely right, Louise, they are chipping away at you. And so your sense of self-worth is constantly being diminished. And they're also frequently very nasty to you. And they will do things like, they'll cheat on you. Often they'll let you know. Often they'll deny it, but it's a very thin veneer, and you know they're texting other people, yet they're trying to control your life so that you don't text or do anything. You get no privacy. They can be, in extreme cases, you know, you can be like a prisoner in your own home. Dreadful. But yeah, it totally is devaluing, and it's taking away any sense of self-worth that you have. And if you stay in a relationship for years, and many people do, I've worked with people who've been 30 or more years in a relationship with a narcissist, you gradually really lose sight of who you are. And yet the thing I would say to people, if anyone's watching is in this kind of a relationship, is still inside you there is a little fighter that knows this is wrong and that knows you deserve better. And this is why people eventually break out, because that inner part of you that deserves to be loved and respected and cherished kind of won't give up. And it's why people finally break out and say, this, I've had enough, I'm going to get out of this, I don't care what it takes, but I'm going to get out, you know, and they reach out for help in one of many different ways. So there is that fighting spirit. So
let's talk about something else, which not only, I mean, it's not really only the loved ones, but it can be the entire family who's affected by one person. So the thing that happens at the end, that degree of fear, the manipulation and the fear, because I don't know about you, but I've never seen anybody involved with a narcissist who doesn't fear the narcissists.
Absolutely, because they've terrified you, they've terrorized you, they've destroyed your life. And I mean, I've got people in my groups who've said they've been emotionally abused, financially abused, sexually abused. They've been stripped of everything. They've got nothing, even their kids. This is huge. Parental alienation is massive in the world of narcissists. And it's heartbreaking because they're so good and clever at making up stuff and making the innocent partner look like the bad person, you know, and they'll go as far as filing false allegations, you know. I've known them to accuse the innocent partner of abusing the children, you know, complete lies. And yet they've got away with it, particularly if they're female narcissists, because they're far more likely to be believed, and the guys then suffer. And, you know, I've got 3,000 guys in my guys group for support, and I'm hearing it from them all the time. And it's so unfair, but that's part of what society is, how it's set up at the moment. But yeah, they will lie, they will cheat, they will steal, they will absolutely destroy lives. Absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about the men, because it's really, such a lot of people don't understand that it's men and women who abuse others.
Yeah.
A woman gets away with it easier though, but
a lot easier.
All of this is coming from somebody who's being broken, and they take their brokenness out on somebody else. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, narcissists are a product usually of very dysfunctional parents themselves. So it's kind of like an arrested development. They create this false persona to protect themselves, and then that becomes a very, very hard shell, to the point that they have no empathy, no compassion, no understanding of other people's feelings. So they're very, very cold and calculating. And even though, yes, it's sad that they haven't had loving parents and that's why they are what they are, we mustn't fall into the trap of feeling sorry for them and thinking we can help them and all of that, because we can't. But men really have a much harder time because, as you say, it's much easier for women to get away with it, because society as a whole see women as, you know, the weaker sex, the fairer sex, while men are, you know, the tough ones and meant to be the violent ones. So if a woman files a charge against her husband or partner, father of her children, that he's been physically or sexually abusive, or she's afraid for the kids, she is 99.9% of the time she's going to be believed, unless the guy has the presence of mind to just keep calm and say, look, I have evidence here. And I'm always encouraging my guys to record stuff, to keep stuff, because they usually will send vicious emails, vicious texts, vicious stuff on Facebook, because they don't think of the repercussions, because, again, that's part of the narcissistic personality disorder. They think they're invincible, you know? So they often make stupid mistakes, which can actually be to their abused partner's advantage if they're thinking straight. So I always advise people, you know, record it and keep calm. And if you have proof, because generally what happens is most of these cases, when the police or the courts get involved in a more, you know, granular level, they realize it's all lies. But of course, for the person, the word is out there and the damage is already done. So that innocent guy, a lot of people are thinking, oh, he beats his wife, or, you know, he abuses kids, when it's simply not true. So they do the damage just by making the accusation, even though it will never stick, you know. So it's hard for guys.
It's like they have this belief that they're omnipotent and that
they do.
They can't be caught.
Yeah, they do.
They can get away with anything.
Yeah, and very often, even when the court sides in you know, with the innocent parent and in favour of that parent and the children, they will often try and break the rules, flout it, because they think, well, the law doesn't apply to them. So it can be tough dealing with them, but you have to be very, very strong. You have to have a really good parental plan in place if you've got kids involved, and they have to be held accountable. And usually that isn't by the victim partner, that is by the courts or the police or whoever gets to enforce it. It can be done, and it is being done, but you do hear an awful lot of horror stories. Yeah.
Okay, so if you have to say, find 3, 4 red flags that's going to come out very early. What would you say, Abe?
My number one from memory, I might have to pull my book up. My number one red flag from memory is to always trust your gut, to tune into how you feel, because I don't think I've talked to or worked with one single person who didn't say, I knew it, I knew there was something wrong, but why didn't I listen to my gut? I didn't trust myself. I should have listened. So that is absolutely the number one, no matter how fantastic it is. Another red flag, I think, is if it is, this love bombing is characteristic of it. If it just is completely over the top, this person is literally bombarding you with wild, crazy declarations of love and affection and never met anyone like you. And they might often talk about, you know, you're my soulmate and you're my twin flame and we're destined to be together, and all of this flowery BS, for want of a better word. They'll also usually be texting you like mad or sexting like mad. So that's another huge red flag. So if you see this early on, very early on, when you're dating a new potential partner, really be on the lookout for that. Another big flag in the beginning, they will very often push you to share a lot of personal information with them. And they may also, if you don't kind of, because they create this empathy with you and they make you feel comfortable with them, they will often share very personal, intimate stuff with you, which may or may not be true. I frankly say don't believe a word that comes out of an arched mouth, but it may be, you know, if someone shared with you, if you think about it, you're on a date and you're getting on great and you're having a really beautiful time together and you're thinking, wow, this guy or this woman is really gorgeous. And it could even be on a first date, but it might be second or third date, and they start sharing deeply personal stuff with you. They maybe start telling you how they were abused as a child or anything like that. You've got to kind of think, wow, is this appropriate so early on to share such intimate stuff? But very often what they're doing is, it's like a you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours, or a reciprocal altruism thing. If they share with you, you think, oh my God, he or she just shared that really deep, dark secret with me. I must share something back. And this is why they do it. It's just a psychological manipulation tactic. So you then share something very intimate, private that happened in your life. So they've got that little nugget out of you. So that's something else, you know, if they start sharing or looking for deep personal information from you early on, that's another red flag.
What about if the fact that they say so much like to be adored and hate it if they are being made to look less or wrong?
They do. It depends on the type, though, because the overt, grandiose narcissist, and you would recognize that person because if you go out with them on a date, they tend to be very sort of obvious about it. You know, they might be looking around and looking down at people, down their nose at people. They might be rude to the waiters because they see people like that as beneath them. So they're the grandiose type, and they often just come across as just really arrogant, and it doesn't mean that you wouldn't fall for them, because there's a book out by, I can't think of her name now, but she's in my network. She wrote a book about her experiences. She had dated one exact typical overt, grandiose, aggressive, arrogant arse, basically, is what she described him as, and she didn't like him at all. But then she caught herself, I think it was around Christmas or New Year's, loose end. She'd already decided not to see him again, but she was at a loose end. He happened to text her. She made the mistake of saying yes and going out with him again, and that was the start of it. And it was a long, difficult relationship, a long road to healing and getting out, you know. So that's your overt. Now, if you come across a vulnerable victim, they don't have that type of persona. They kind of come across as very meek and mild and vulnerable, and they fire up your protective instincts. You kind of want to look after them and look out for them. So there's all these different types to look out for, but very quickly you realize they're very, very needy, and they can be very snidey and demeaning, but in a, oh, poor me, poor me, poor me syndrome. So they make you feel bad that you aren't giving more of yourself to them. And again, all very complicated relationship dynamics that go on here, but they are still narcissists. They are still utterly selfish to the core. And this is the one thing they all have in common, you know.
Okay, is there any more types you want to tell us about?
So the overt is the obvious one, easy to spot. The vulnerable, shy one is the one I just talked about. You know, you can go deep, deep, deep down the rabbit hole with this. You have the malignant, covert malignant, you know, when they are very undercover, they seem fabulous to everybody else, but to you, they're an absolute nightmare. Nobody ever gets to see the real side of them, only you behind closed doors. Covert malignants are the worst.
That's one that's there a lot, isn't it? That one is, yeah. That happens a lot.
I think that deep down they are all malignant in terms of the fact that they are all completely self-serving and completely self-absorbed and completely selfish. But it's just the outward appearance that differs quite a lot. So the grandiose overt might not be particular. They can be charming, but they might not be. So you might have someone who's really, really popular and likable and philanthropic, you know, they give huge amounts of money to charities and churches, and everyone thinks, wow, this is an angel, you know, street angel, house devil, my mother always used to say. Then you have cerebral narcissists and you have somatic narcissists. So the cerebrals are very concerned with their intellect. They think they are so clever and so smart and way above everyone else, and they should only mix with people of extremely high intellects. So if you've got someone like that, they will often try and belittle you in that way because their intelligence usually is very, very superior. They are usually, you know, very, very sharp intellectual level people that you know, your average person can't hold a conversation with them, because they're that damn smart. But they can use that then to belittle you because they start talking and you're like, I don't understand a word of that. And then you have the somatic, and they're all about looks and beauty and physique. And the somatics will expect also from you a very high level of looking good and, you know, always being fit, never being overweight, and will criticize you a lot for even the tiniest little what they perceive as, you know, infraction in your appearance. So yeah, it's interesting to get to know the type, because if you get to know what that type is, then you can start to understand more about the typical types of behaviors you're going to see from that person.
I think there's been a lot of dings already, you know, because I think if anybody is in a relationship and you're not very sure about what's going on here, and you feel diminished yourself and you don't quite understand how on earth you managed to get there, the very first thing is doing what we do now, which is making you aware of all the effects and the patterns, so that you can see clearly what you have in your life. Okay, so do you have some examples for us of people who've managed to get out of this?
Oh, lots, fortunately. I mean, this is the good side of it, that no matter how bad it might...
Anonymously.
Yeah. Sorry?
Anonymously, of course.
Oh yeah, I would never ever give names. I have lots of testimonials and lots of examples in my book, but I usually use with permission, but I generally say we won't use your name, we'll just put initials or we'll make up a name. The one thing I think is important for people to understand is that there is always hope and there is always light at the end of the tunnel. And to get help, but the first step towards that is, as you just said, Louise, identifying that there is a pattern here, that you are being abused and that you don't deserve this. You know, it's not your fault. You need to get out and you need help to do that. So I absolutely always recommend, if you can, get a therapist at the very least, get into a support group, reconnect with your family or friends who you may have been isolated from during, you know, the early stages. So getting that support's important, and it does make a difference. You know, I'm seeing people in my groups all the time who have come out the other side. A lot of them kind of want to walk away from it and forget that it ever happened and just say like never again and walk away from it. A lot of them want to keep in the group so that they can support other people. A lot of them become advocates for other people. So they absolutely, people do heal. It's easy to kind of think, oh, this is so bad and I'm never going to get out of it. But that's not true. You can get out of it. And I work with people all the time. It's what I do. I work with people who are trying to heal from narcissistic abuse. And usually when people come to me, they've tried all sorts of things. They've tried everything. They may have tried other therapists. They've read dozens of books. They've watched God knows how many YouTube channels. And there's a lot of really good information and good people out there on YouTube providing information. But still, in spite of that, they still struggle. So that's when it's time to reach out and get help. Because, you know, I had one woman, actually the very first woman I worked with, I'll tell you about her. She was, I had actually known her briefly in Dubai, because I lived in Dubai for, well, Abu Dhabi for several years. And she contacted me because she knew I was involved in therapy and coaching and personal development and self-worth and what have you. So she contacted me and she said, I desperately need your help because and she told me the story. She had been working with a narcissistic boss who was hell, absolute hell to work with, to the point that she almost attacked my client one day, and my client was so traumatized she had to leave work. She literally left the job. And she didn't work for a year. She actually worked from home. She's a journalist, so she was able to work from home. And then after a year, she thought she's probably okay to go back to work. She was still having panic attacks, flashbacks to this incident with this person who almost attacked her. She was really struggling to sleep properly. She was waking up in the morning just with sweaty palms and panics, and it would take her half an hour to compose herself and get okay enough. But she did it. She was a fighter and she went into this new job. And unbelievably, within 2 weeks, she realized she was right in the midst of another narcissist. And at this point, she came home, she reached out to me and she said, I cannot do this again. I don't have the physical strength. I don't have the emotional strength. And she's literally shaking when she's talking to me. I can see her. She's shaking and she's on the verge of tears. So I did some work with her, and I use NLP, which is very, very powerful particularly for things like panic attacks and anxiety and PTSD. It's amazingly powerful. So I literally did one emergency fix with her there and then. And she contacted me the next morning and she said, I can't believe this. She said, this is the first time I've had a decent night's sleep, and I can't tell you how long. This is the first time I woke up and not had the shakes and not been terrified to get out of bed. This is amazing. So we did do some more work together because I have different coaching packages, but that one we did another, I think, 4 or 5 sessions, and she had awful childhood abuse. Not to the point that she was beaten or sexually abused, but then abuse comes in many different forms. She had several older brothers, and one time she was only about 5 when this happened, 5 or 6, and she picked a milk carton up to move it over and have some cereal, put it on her cereal, and she dropped it and it splashed all over the floor. And her father, she had no memory of this came up during regression work. Her father, in front of her brothers, made her get down on the floor and lick it up. I know, horrifying. It just gives me goosebumps when I think about it. But you know, that is massive abuse. Yes, he didn't beat her, he didn't rape her, but how demeaning and horrifying and terrifying is that to a little girl? So that was one of the big incidences that came out, and we did some healing work on that. And then there were some others. And I generally find with most of the people I work with that they're, not always, and it doesn't always have to be the case, but most of the time it is, that there has been trauma in their childhood that has made them feel weak and inferior and worthless and undervalued and not heard. And that stays, even though they grow into an adult and they think, yeah, I'm pretty smart, I know what I'm doing, I've got a job, you know, this is a very smart woman. You know, most of the people I work with are very smart people, but there's still that inner child that is wounded. And healing that inner child is incredible, incredibly effective.
Yeah.
So I really
You know,
encourage everyone.
you know my
Sorry?
area. You know my area, because this is what I do the whole time, which is
Yeah.
why a lot of my clients have to do with narcissists.
Yeah.
Because of that love bombing is just the thing. It feels so wonderful.
Oh,
But
good.
there's
Yeah. Yeah.
enormous need for affirmation. That's
Yeah,
why we'll go
absolutely.
mills and boons on whoever swamps us, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
look at
Absolutely.
the books out there that we are reading, all these romances that we are reading. It normalizes this over attentiveness as something desirable. I mean, how can you not
Yeah.
fall for it if you've got this big
Yeah.
need inside you?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why they are so successful, narcissists, at roping people in. So it's like, it's a massive thing on a global scale. People need to get back to self-love, to absolutely just loving themselves and being enough. And it's huge. It's a massive, massive issue. We can only do what we can do to help the people we can, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Okay, so
Okay.
no matter what, even if you know today, now your eyes have opened, you've now seen the patterns, you go like, okay, I'm not crazy after all. You're still going to have trouble to get out, because you're going to blame yourself. That is how much you have been diminished.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
going to fear. You are going to fear that person. You're going to fear the stories. You're going to fear whatever that person have put on you. So
You're absolutely right.
It's hard to get out. It's not easy to get out.
It's not easy to get out, and I agree with you. And everything you've just said there is absolutely true, because there is so much fear around leaving. There's fear about, as you said, that person and the retaliation, because it often comes with smear campaigns and what have you. There is a lot of other fears, like, where am I going to live? Can I afford to support myself? Are they going to try and stop me seeing the children? Am I going to be alone for the rest of my life? All of these are things that come up. And one of the things I say to people is that if once you've come to this realization, you need to sit down and write everything down, where you are and what's going on exactly for you, and look at the pros and cons. What is the value in staying in this relationship? And you have to get to that point where you know deep in your heart and the core of your being that you cannot live another day like this. You cannot live the rest of your life like this. And making that decision for yourself is the crucial step. Now, it might take you months of planning. It could even take years of planning. But just making that decision for yourself is the beginning of the road to healing. It's really the very first step. And I've been putting together a free PDF that I'm going to be doing like a new gift for my subscribers. And it's one of the things I talk about. There was one woman that I knew, she was in one of my groups in my network, and I posted about this very issue, and she responded and she said, you know what, this is what I did. And she said, it took me 14 years. I had to put up with that bastard for 14 years until the kids were old enough and through the crucial schooling. And she said, I secretly saved money into the secret bank account over 14 years that he never knew about. And I set up stealthily a secret life for myself. And she said, and finally the day came and I got away from him. And this had been 7 or 8 years since, and she was living like anonymously away from him. And I said, that's exactly the level you have to think at. If you can't just get out easily and quickly, and I say quickly very loosely, not everyone has to go through those extremes. But I've talked to many women who couldn't leave. There's a woman I worked with in Italy, a British woman, married to a very, very wealthy Italian guy, like super wealthy and super powerful and influential in their area. And they had children. And she said, I knew I didn't have a hope in hell of getting those children. He's the man. It's a very patriarchal society. She said, if I want to see my kids ever again, she said, I had no choice but to just suck it up and stick with them until they were old enough. They both went off to college. Then she actually did divorce him, and he stripped her of everything, even though he's like multi-millionaire. Left her with scraping by, you know. But she said, I didn't care. She said, I've got my freedom now. I'm free of him. I don't care.
So the
There's
best
another
advice,
woman.
sorry, Maria, the best advice really is do not get into it. You know, don't trust just being in love.
I know. Read my book. Don't ever get involved with one, because
Do good
the
to
red flags are
Maria's book.
always, I know, the red flags are always there.
They're there.
But so many times it's too late by the time people see them, and then they're so in the thick of it, and it is a long climb out. But you can get out. You can get out. I always want people to know that and have that hope that this is not a death sentence. You can get out. You just have to make that decision for yourself that I'm going to get out. I deserve to have happiness in my life, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. Another lady, she's just quickly, she's one of the moderators in my women's group. She had a couple of young kids. She had to flee, literally, you know, in the middle of the night to a woman's shelter, a secret hideaway, and that's how she got out. And she knew if she didn't, she would have never survived. Another moderator in my women's group, same thing. She was actually married to a sociopath, and she also planned her escape, and she made sure she waited for a time when she knew he would be gone long enough and he guaranteed would not be back. And she had a police escort come to see her and her little babies under her arms, just the bags they could carry. And she said, I'm just going to do this in case he shows up, just in case, you never know. And she got escorted off, and she went off to another state. This is what you have to do.
Yeah. Okay, so once we've got awareness and once we make up our minds, and that's very important, then I'm going to say the best thing you can do under the sun is to get yourself a professional who can help you, because you need to be built up from scratch again. Find yourself a professional who specializes in this. They know, like somebody like Maria, there are other people who are specializing in this. And get Maria's book. The link will be up there, and get Maria's free gift. And go join her groups. There are other groups, but just go and join Maria's books. We'll put the links in for you too. Go and join her groups, because first thing you're going to find out is you're not crazy. You are not the guilty one. This is not normal. There are other people, and they have managed to get out. So there's hope for you. Maria, any parting words from you?
I think you've ended on what I would say actually is the hope. There is hope for you, because just having that kernel of hope for some people who are so desperate can be just enough to light that spark in them that says, okay, I'm going to do this. And, you know, I know a lot of people cannot afford professional help. We know this because they've been financially destroyed, but there's always groups. And I know that my group has helped so many women and guys. They've said, and I regularly get it in my groups, my God, this group saved my life. A lot of these people haven't worked with me because they can't afford to, or any other professional. So get in a group, get the support, find a group that you feel really, you know, well, come to my groups. My groups are the best. Definitely. So I think that,
don't do it alone. That's the most important.
Absolutely.
Do not think that this is your responsibility to fix by yourself. Get help.
Get help, exactly. And the help is there. Free support groups. All my groups are free. And have that hope. Get in there, come in, talk to us. You will see, and you will get support. So yeah, that would definitely be what I would leave you with.
Thank you, Maria. This has been so enlightening. I'm sure this has helped a lot. Lots of love.
Well, thank you.
Everybody stay tuned. We're going to have a next speaker up soon. Lots of love to you. Bye-bye.